The Six Nations Show on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, main sponsor of the Irish rugby team. We all belong to the team of us.
You're very welcome along to the Six Nations Show with Vodafone, main sponsor of the Irish rugby team. We all belong to the team of us. It's Nathan with you this evening, and Keith Wood and Grace Davitt are with us as well. Evening, Grace.
Evening, Nathan. How are you doing?
Very good. Keith, how are you keeping?
Great form, thank you, Nathan. How are you?
I'm all right. We're back. We had a little break last week, but back with a bang this weekend. Italy against Ireland gets us underway 2:15 at the Stadio Olimpico in Rome on Saturday. Wales, England will go ahead 4:45 at the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff. And then on Sunday, France against the unbeaten Scots at the Stade de France in Paris at 3 o'clock. If you missed it, the Ireland team was announced by Andy Farrell earlier today before the squad took that flight to Rome. 6 changes for the Ireland team that started with 2 victories to this tournament. Ross Byrne, as expected, is one of them. Johnny Sexton is travelling, but he's not fit to start. So Ross Byrne will make his first Six Nations start in what is a new look half-back line, because Craig Casey will also make his first championship start at scrum half, taking over from Conor Murray. Ian Henderson comes in for the injured Ty Byrne in the second row. Ronan Kelleher starts in place of Rob Herring. He's out of the matchday squad. Dan Sheehan is going to be the replacement hooker. And in the centre, Bundy Aki will win his cap in the centre alongside Gary Ringrose. Stuart McCluskey drops to the bench, and the back three remains the same: Hugo Keenan, James Lowe and Mac Hansen. James Ryan, as we said, will be partnered by Ian Henderson, and Jack Conan is into the side as well, so he'll start at number 8, Caelan Doris at 6 and Josh van der Fleer at 7. 6 changes, Keith. Like, this is the game we always get excited about, and we want a dozen changes and try all these guys who've just been on the periphery. Not really the Andy Farrell way.
No, I really like the side. I like the changes. I like we were just chatting off air, but I like the fact that you don't like the fact that guys are injured, but the injuries have given an opportunity for other players to show what it's worth. So I think we seem to be building our strength in depth a lot during this competition by not changing too much. And I know that sounds kind of slightly counterintuitive, but there was 3 or 4 injuries at the start, and we're now beginning to get strength and depth in those positions. And so I'm delighted to see Casey starting at 9. I think he's the best passer in the group. I want him to play the way he started playing a couple of years ago. I thought he did that for the most part when he came off the bench 2 weeks ago. And I just think we're getting to see players playing in combination. So it's very rare that we change a 9 and 10 and that has injury enforced inside that. I think Casey would have started anyway. But Ross Byrne gets his chance as well. So it's... I like it. The match 2 weeks ago was best game of rugby I've ever seen Ireland play, and we make 6 changes. So, when did that really happen in our past for a competitive match? So I like it.
Are we past the stage, Grace, of thinking about this as a potential banana skin? Like, it's 10 years, not just since Italy beat Ireland, but Italy have actually won a home game in the Six Nations. As Keith said, like the Irish performance last time out is as good as it gets. Like, this isn't the match we're going into thinking about winning. It's a matter of how much.
Yeah, it is. But I think what Andy Farrell will be looking for is that performance. We've seen like brilliant cohesiveness with the likes of Bealham coming in, and we're all like, oh, Tyke Furlong's missing, what are we going to do? And Bealham has stepped up, and as Keith Wood said there, with the changes. But Tom O'Toole, Cian Healy's available. Tom O'Toole is still on that bench, which is really good to see that. And I think the performance is going to be key, the cohesiveness of all the changes. He'll be expecting the exact same standards for them to play the exact same level. And, the fact that you're bringing Lions onto a starting team, it's definitely not like these players that are coming on are going to be any less... I suppose, of any talent. They're huge, amazing players. Conan coming on and Ian Henderson are just going to add to that. And I think Italy will put it to them and they'll be really physical, but I still think with the way that Ireland are playing and with that depth of the squad and with even, the likes of who can come on off that bench, that they can put in a really big game.
Keith, it does feel with Ross Byrne, maybe we've finally reached the end point of that discussion of who is the backup to Johnny Sexton. This is still a big game for Ross Byrne. It's the first time it have started a Six Nations game. But also he's had a couple of weeks now where it's sort of been known that Johnny Sexton wouldn't be playing. It's not a case that Sexton's been rested. You know, he's been struggling with a bit of an injury. So he'll have been able to lead training over the last couple of weeks as well. He's been able to have a full and proper preparation for this. He's not alongside Gibson Park, though. He's not alongside Conor Murray. He's alongside Craig Casey, who's in a similar position. So does he need to have a more senior role actually at out half than maybe he would have if it was Murray or Gibson Park there?
I don't think so. I think for a lot of the conversations that we have with Sexton, that his longevity has been bolstered by a system that pretty much protects him. And I have to say, I think Ross Byrne fits into that system as well, and he just needs to play like he does. He doesn't have to play exactly like Johnny, and to be honest, I don't think he can play exactly like Johnny, but he can play like a very stable version of Johnny, if that makes sense. And like Johnny has, I don't know whether it's a rugby IQ that seems to work at a different level, and that this system is based around him, whereas he can pull whatever string needs to be pulled. I don't think Ross has as much time on the ball as Johnny has mentally. So Johnny can know when to pull the last pass a little bit later than anybody else. I don't think Ross can do that quite as well. And we do lose a little bit of a cutting threat because of that. But he needs to be comfortable within that system and see how it works for him, because I think he plays very well. He is not a guy who attacks the line. He is not a guy who draws a lot of people onto him. He doesn't get sucked into that too much, but he still can have a big influence on the game. I don't know that he needs to be the senior player. He's not a senior player as such. He hasn't played he's played a good few games, but he needs to be able to play and feel comfortable for himself in the jersey. And if that is as a senior player, that's fine. But for me, I just like him to go and play, make the right decisions, make the decisions he feels he should make, not that anybody else should make. And he just needs to be Ross Byrne. He doesn't need to be Johnny Sexton.
And it's not as if he's coming into this position for the first time ever, because he does it all the time with Leinster, Grace, where Johnny Sexton rarely plays at this stage in the URC and misses plenty of games in the Champions Cup as well. And it's not as if we look at Leinster and say, well, Johnny's not there, they're going to come up with a totally new game plan just so it fits the Ross Byrne system. He knows how to fit in at short notice at times, but also alongside this quality of player. He knows how to actually just put the head down and do what needs to be done.
Yeah, and I thought what I was really impressed with, especially against the French in the last 20 minutes, was his composure. You know, Casey came on and Byrne came on, and they really controlled the game. We've seen Casey put little kicks through, you know, keeping the French honest, and Byrne did the exact same and pinned France back into their own 22. And when you look at that last try with Ringrose, it was like after 19 phases, you know, they managed to get through all those phases and control the match, and like that was with him on against the, you know, the second best team in the world. And also his boot, like kicking from for penalties, you know, he has a huge success rate. You know, he just seems so calm and composed, and I've no doubt like that with the amount that, and I think that's really key this year, is the amount that they've all been able to step up and step in without that disparity of saying, oh, I'm the second ranked 10 or I'm the third ranked thing. Now it's going to be key, hopefully, that he stays on. Pete Garbisi is back in there for Italy, you know, who is a real weapon, and he'll have great passion, and he'll be wanting to put him under pressure as well.
James Ryan will captain the side in Sexton's absence. He was talking yesterday, and there's been a lot of articles written today, Keith, about his leadership and how maybe Gary Ringrose may well be the next captain at Leinster, that they put a lot of work into him as well. And it's been remarked upon that decision-making process, that Ireland have so many senior players now. Peter O'Mahony can chip in, that when they are making that decision, there's no shortage of big personalities there, which you would have to feel is a huge advantage for Ireland heading towards a World Cup. When you think back to that sort of decision making on the field process when you were Ireland captain, was it all on your shoulders, or would you have felt you had a similar committee style?
It was all on my shoulders at the start, because I was shite at it. You know, that's the simple truth. You know, you're going in. I was 24 years of age. You're trying to make the best decisions you can. There was The team changed every week. The coach changed every 9 months for about 6 or 7 years. You're looking for some level of consistency. You're looking for consistent voices. And actually, it's so different from what it was in the early 90s. If you raised a voice at all in the early 90s, you got dropped. You weren't patted on the back for having had that sort of opinion. So that's kind of changed a lot. When I got towards the end of my career, I did speak, still probably spoke too much, but you were relying on players around you to be your eyes and ears, to help you make decisions. And it didn't matter where it came from. You always talked about the spine of the team, 2, 8, 9, 10, 15, that they would be able to see an awful lot. You've a great balance on it. But every now and then I'd get a bit of a bollocking from Claude that wasn't the right decision to make, and try to think about this one. And he only ever said it if he really felt it. And it was worth it when he did say it. Or Anthony Foley, who spoke very rarely. And if he did speak, you nearly had to take what he said because he knew the game back to front. So it's become a little bit quieter in the midst of that period of time. So that's 20 years ago since I retired. So under Joe Schmidt, I think there were certain players were able to talk and do it, but now it seems to be far more collective, far more open. They want to hear the voices from it. All the noise we're hearing of the last year is that people are being heard. They want their opinion. They're not being challenged for their opinion. It's not being ridiculed at any stage. That you're trying to get everybody to have a voice, and there still are the leaders then to make a decision. I think that's the healthiest that you can possibly have.
Did you ever have that in the dressing room, Keith, where actually everybody's voice was welcome?
Yeah, we did have it at the end, actually. It was interesting. It's funny, where it's welcome. Is it welcome for every coach? May not be. Is it welcome for the captain? Maybe. Is it welcome for different times of the season, or whatever level of the pressure is on? All those things that we kind of reflect back on now. You were trying to learn it at that stage, and it's become interesting that that's the case. Every bit of noise I hear from Ireland is the pleasure that it is to be in there, and that comes out about good psychologist. It comes out about a great head coach, but it comes out also about people being appreciated for what they do and recognised for what they do. And some of that recognition is by getting the jersey and starting. Some of it's by winning, but some of it's by that sense of pride of being involved in the squad. So I think Grace touched on a point there. It doesn't seem to matter. Of course, it matters to a little bit of personal pride, but the team pride seems to be taking over at the present moment in time, where people are really happy to be involved in the 23, but they're also happy to be involved outside it because they always know that there's a chance for them to get a chance.
Those players that are on the outside, then, it's quite interesting, the replacement selection as well, Grace. So Stuart McCluskey drops out and Bundy Aki comes in, but the likes of Jimmy O'Brien, Jamie Osborne, Jacob Stockdale, Jordan Larmour, who have all been in the squad for the last month, they're not in the 23 again. Again, shows that he has a tried and trusted selection. It's interesting as we start to move towards a potential World Cup squad. The probability is only one, maybe two of those players get in there. Does that suggest that by the time it comes to a World Cup squad, actually those guys will be fighting it out purely on form, and he doesn't really feel that he's going to learn a huge amount about them in a game like this that will get to his final decision come the end of August, beginning of September, for what his World Cup squad is?
Yeah, it's one of the interesting ones, because when I looked at Keenan, Lowe and Hansen have all played the last two matches full 80 minutes, and I was like, would he have brought Larmour in, give him a chance, Jimmy O'Brien in? Jimmy has been playing with Leinster 15 and on the right wing. We know what Keenan can do. He's been playing immensely out of his skin, but it just seems like there's enough changes in there, maybe that consistent. Lowe hadn't got much rugby, before the start of the Six Nations, so he's probably give him a bit more game time as well, which is crucial. But Yeah, I do really feel for them, and as a utility back as I was in my day, and I was, it was nearly worse because you ended up on the bench a lot because I could cover centre, I could cover wing, and when you look, we don't have that utility back. McCluskey is a centre. We don't really carry that back three substitute. We know Ringrose can slip in there if needed. So I feel there just isn't that spot for them at the minute with the dynamic of, having your 9, your 10, and then your utility back. So I think it is difficult, and I suppose it is relying on those injuries and going, well, one more injury, they could get their chance, and they're getting it on merit. So, fair play. And they just have to have that hunger and keep fighting. And hopefully, via Scotland, via England, that they get an opportunity.
Keith, you fancied yourself as a utility back in the day as well for a while, didn't you? The odd game here or there?
They refused to give me the jersey.
Yeah, the coaches weren't happy about it.
Absolute disgrace.
It is interesting.
What?
I was going to say, if you look at that, it's a 33-man squad this time around. There's 23 players selected in this. We've spoken about 6 changes. There's 4 or 5 front-liners who were injured as well. There's going to be a lot of lads who, I know you say in the periphery, they're all buying into this at the moment, but a lot of those players are going to start sweating quite soon about the possibility of how they actually, when it gets to the final numbers, make it into a World Cup squad.
I think there's a lot of guys sweating, and we don't normally have that as a situation. So I think that's pretty decent as well. I think we will see some of the players coming back in. So you're entitled to be remembered for how you play in a jersey if you're out injured. But if somebody else comes in and fills it fully, you're aging, you may not get the chance. So the only person in that group, I think that Grace mentioned, that I would like, I'd like to see Osborne. I'd like to have seen him on the bench. It's hard because McCluskey has come back in. He hasn't been in for a long while. He's been given a sustained chance this time. I think he's done well, but Bundy has also delivered for Ireland, and he's been out of it for a while, so he gets a chance. I just think Osborne offers something different, and you just want, even if it's one bolter that you have for a World Cup, because you never quite know. You'd like to have an unknown quantity in the middle of it, because none of the opposition will really understand exactly what's going to happen with this guy either. So I'd quite like to see him get an opportunity in off the bench. I thought it was going to happen in this game. That was one I was fairly certain, and it hasn't. So for me, that's what we're really picking holes in a selection.
Yeah. They'll be picking holes as well when you're wandering around Killaloo tomorrow as well, and they're going, what about Gavin Coombs? What about Gavin Coombs?
Yeah, Gavin Coombs scores a lot of short tries. He is incredibly effective for Munster. I think he dropped away a chunk last year. I thought he when he came on the Munster scene, he did incredibly well. He dropped away a bit in standard. I think he lost his confidence a little. I think he's coming back into it. I don't know that he's at the level that we're seeing on the team at the moment. And so it is a big hill for him to climb with the quality of the players that are there ahead of him. So you're looking for a player to be involved at the heightened level of Van der Fleer, Caelan Doris, and also, again, Grace mentioned it, having Jack Conan coming back in, getting his confidence as the line's number 8. We need a backup to Caelan Doris because he is absolute standout. And I think Jack Conan's getting the chance, getting the opportunity. He needs to take it because Coombs is breathing down his neck. But Coombs needs to play at a really heightened standard now, because some of the quality that we've been seeing for the last few weeks is incredible.
What about Italy then, Grace? Ahead of the tournament on the first Six Nations show, we were talking about Kieran Crowley's comments at the launch and really seemed to be concerned about the lack of quality at his disposal and the lack of game time players we're getting with the club sides in Italy. Like, they ran France very close in the opening game, 31-14 against England, this after beating Australia, beating Wales last year, but their home record is pretty atrocious. On the flip side, Garbisi is back. Is this a keep it tight for an hour job if you're Italy, and they'll be happy enough with that?
Yeah, like they're hugely physical. They brought it to France, and I think it was a bonus that it was the first game of the Six Nations for them. You know, where they're fresh, they're strong, they're not carrying any knocks, and they really matched France with that physical power. And then you have Carbuzzo just tearing it up in the backs. Like, you know, it's a really good match between him and Keenan. Like, I was looking at some of the stats and they're so well matched with, you know, the meters made, you know, the amount of carries and line breaks that they have. And he's just really exciting. But I think with Garbisi there at 10, there'll be a lot more control. Not that Alan did a bad game, but he just brings it up a next level. But it's the quick ruck ball. Because of that physicality, they're able to get that quick ruck ball and they're able to keep it going. Now, I think the biggest thing that we've seen, obviously England wore them down and, you know, got some good tries, and they just weren't able to finish anything that they started. And I think a key thing is, you know, that we all can see is their exit strategy, and Vardy doesn't have that box kick. They mess about in their own 22 and they get punished for it. And I just think even with Garbisi there, he'll add that extra kick option. But I think Ireland will just be able to put them under huge pressure, you know, pin them back down. You know, we've seen Byrne pin France back. So if he can do that with France, I've no doubt he can do it with Italy.
Often in a game like this, Keith, you would expect the opposition to come out all guns blazing, that Italy is the underdogs. But Ireland, the level of professionalism that they seem to have at the moment, the level that they're just showing week in, week out, you'd expect actually Ireland to start this game quickly and try and crush them as early as possible.
Yeah, I think crush them is the wrong phrase actually, and I'm going to say slightly disrespectful, Nathan, but I would expect Ireland to come out and start from the first minute because they have to. And this is the opportunity for some of those players who haven't been picked to really put their hand up. And that's just incredibly important for them to do it. And it is to be that professional, that accurate from the start. I'm not so certain of the crushing of them. I think this is a far superior Italian team than we've seen for a while. I like Crowley. He's quite miserable when he's talking, but he's kind of miserable fighting his own corner, and he doesn't seem to be overly happy. Yet their performances have been pretty fantastic. But you know, we're always looking at that performance and then getting from that performance to the wins. So their performances have been of the highest standard that we've seen from them. Even England kind of stultifying, kicking the ball constantly. I mean, England just kicked the ball in the 22 constantly, which was quite something. And they got their win, but it was a dreadful way to win. And I think it frustrated Italy. I don't think Ireland will play in that fashion, but I think our pressure will be different. I think if we hold the ball a lot longer, we spread them wide, we bring it in tight. The ability to hit up left and right off rucks has been pretty fantastic. The opportunity to spread the forwards a lot. Their discipline still tends to struggle. If the longer you hold on to the ball, the harder it is for them to keep their discipline. Ireland have looked unhurried for an awful lot of this championship. That's a great sign. They don't seem to be under as much pressure as everybody else seems to be. So that's a great sign to see. I think Italy have a really good team. Negri for me is pretty phenomenal. A lot of the forwards have been doing incredibly well. Nicotera has been doing really well. If they can stay into the game enough, they're not suddenly having 10 or 15 penalties in a trot. No team has put them under that level of pressure. They haven't given up the ghost like they have in times past. So, and I think they can now score pretty much from anywhere. And so I think it'll be a closer game than a lot of people would expect. I think we'll win, and I think we could win with a good few scores to spare. But I think we'll have to fight unbelievably hard for that to be the case.
So that's 2:15 Saturday. We do have a second game on Saturday. Wales, England is going to go ahead despite all the threats of a strike from the Welsh players. Grace, when we were heading into the Ireland game, it was Warren Gatland back, the emotion, a sold out Millennium Stadium, the roof closed, and that this would bring Welsh to a level we haven't seen over the past 12, 24 months. And everybody who was at that game said 10, 12 minutes in, the stadium was silent, that Ireland had survived it. There was no initial onslaught. And again, you're going into this week thinking it's England at home, all the emotion of what the players have gone through over the past couple of weeks. Is there anything actually on the pitch that we've seen from the first two games that can give this Welsh support any hope?
No, I think they're firefighting at this stage. They're really struggling, obviously, behind the scenes. I think, we thought Warren Gatland was going to give them that stability that they needed. He went with the old haunts the first time. He changed it up. He's now changed it again. We seen that last game. I was watching Bigger's demeanour, and he was so frustrated and angry and getting annoyed at the other players at Dyer. He was giving out to him in the 22 and he got that bad pass, and there was another pass out the back door where Dyer could have scored, and he was just so frustrated, and to see him dropped, and Liam Williams is off. Obviously we have Halfpenny back in, but it's just, I don't think they have that continuity that Ireland have. They haven't got that ability to slot people in. So with another third game with a load of changes again, against England, yes, you can have all the passion you want, but if you don't have the ability and you have the match of inexperience, and it's too broken up for me. You have Zamet back in, who's done really well at club. He really shone, but now he's stepping back into a new setup at Wales. And yes, it'll be great to have Halfpenny back in, but I think in the pack, yes, there is that consistency, and we have obviously back row, Falatau back in and Tubrick. So, two really good players. But I think England, will be up for it. I think England will see the disruption in Wales to be like, yeah, we have this, we've got the monkey off our back, we've beat Italy. But I still think it's going to be a tough game. It is still Wales and Principality, and they haven't, they always seem to pull it together. But, and Bigger is on that bench, and if he gets an opportunity to come on, I've no doubt he'll have the bit between his teeth and wanting to prove himself. So, yeah, it's so many changes. It's
9 changes in total again for Wales. You say Bigger's on the bench, so Owen Williams starts at out half, Lee Halfpenny's in at full back, as you say, Louis Rees-Zammett's back in on the wing, Mason Grady makes his international debut in the centre. Keith, it's hard to see everything that's gone on over the past couple of weeks in Welsh rugby, how it can be a positive emotion that the players are bringing to the pitch on Sunday. You've that side of it, and then with the actual tactical game plan of Warren Gatland trying to figure out how he somehow gets a 15 that works together, which he seems to be really struggling with.
Yeah, you know what? It doesn't even have to be positive. It can be absolutely bitter, and Gatland does have that ability to have a them against us, and he doesn't care who the them is, and he can say part of that's the WRU, part of it's the English rugby team, part of it's the English fans. He doesn't care. And he's right not to. The point is to try and get his team to an emotional pitch to play the game, irrespective of how negative an awful lot of the last week was. And it does show the absolute precarious nature of our game, actually, at the moment. Leicester having to have 13 million put in to stave off administration in the last week is quite extraordinary situation to have as well. So the game is in a state of crux, but it's a game, and that's the manner in which they'll go about it. This is a game that they have to go and play. A lot of guys that are there, not just the players on the field, but more so the players that aren't on the field, the club players that are in Wales, they've been united in an argument this week, and it's finally come up to the 11th hour, and they fought and fought and fought. And they've got a sense of security that they didn't have beforehand. That's positive, and so they can have that positive on one side, put that in the back pocket and know that job has been done this week. Then look at all the bloody bitterness that you can go and let's prove them right. Well, I'll show them, sort of thing. That's a good place to be. I think it's a cracking game, because I think England it's a really good selection from England, but they're totally have taken 3 steps back to try and build it back up again when they got the first step against Italy. But they're not playing in a style that would terrify you. They're playing in a style that will pin people back and wait for them to make mistakes, which Italy ultimately did. Down in Cardiff, that's harder. So I think it's an interesting selection. I don't know if it's a good selection or not. And I like some of those guys, are they over the hill or not over the hill? But I think they're two teams that are shy on confidence, which makes for a really interesting afternoon in Cardiff.
France-Scotland should be pretty tasty on Sunday afternoon as well, Keith. France have won 18 of their last 19 test matches on home soil. Scotland, the only team to beat them the last time they were there 2 years ago. And Scotland went into that game last time out against Wales with everybody saying, well, inconsistency. How many years have we seen Scotland win the opening game and not be able to back it up? They backed it up. They're starting to think about a championship this year.
Yeah, they backed it up. A lot of that was the kind of magic of Finn Russell, which again terrifies and excites in equal measure. And he is given. It's just an entirely different role of a 10. He's been given the opportunity. I mean, I know we've said this a couple of times. Townsend gets criticised for his treatment of him, and yet we're seeing him coming back to his best. And do you have to drop him every 6 months to try and get the best out of him almost? It's an interesting way of dealing with an entire maverick, really. But he is brilliant, and when he's on form, he can be really brilliant. The Scottish, I think they're managing their expectation for the first time. I mean, I used to have great fun with Andy Nicol that if they scored a try, he'd absolutely lose a run of himself. If they won a match, he'd be crying every minute for about 6 weeks afterwards. And it's calmed down somewhat. They're kind of waiting to see what happens. And this is a huge match for them. But I don't think they're under any pressure whatsoever. The pressure's on France to win at home. So if they go with that freedom to play and the right level of concentration, they can be really awkward. And they've proven to be good at destabilising teams that should be winning. So they destabilise England. Now, I don't think they should have won. I think Scotland were in a better position. But they've beaten France a bit lately. That's a big deal. And so they're not afraid of them anymore. And if they take this as a freebie, they can't really go from losing a lot of matches to winning a Six Nations or winning a Grand Slam and taking it that has to be a huge pressure for them. I think they have to take this as being unlikely, but enjoy it.
Yeah, Grace, just to finish then on this game, France were on that incredible winning run until Ireland brought it to a pretty quick halt. There is a bit of pressure on them now at home because they don't need this to become a sudden malaise 6 months out from a home World Cup.
Yeah, they have to keep that mentality up. You have the World Cup, they're playing at home. They still have an opportunity maybe for the Six Nations, depending how Ireland do, for the rest of the games. So they will want to just nip it in the bud. And we know what the French mentality can be like, that they get under their skin and, worry about it too much. But I think what Keith is saying is totally right. It is all in France's hands that they need to get that win. They're at home. They pushed it tight with Italy. It wasn't a confident win. They've lost to Ireland away. This is their home game now. They're going to want to put in a performance and show, what they can do going into a World Cup, and especially at home. And I think Scotland, they've had them 2 good wins, but I think it's a reach too far to say they're going to get 3 wins in a row.
All right, Grace, great stuff as always.
Cheers, Nathan.
Keith, always a pleasure.
Great, Nathan. Great to see you both. Enjoy it.
All right, that was the Six Nations Show with Vodafone, main sponsor of the Irish rugby team. We all belong to the team of us.
The Six Nations Show on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, main sponsor of the Irish rugby team. We all belong to the team of us.